Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jay. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button, dude. Like, comment, all that shit. Really fucking helps me out, and I appreciate it, honestly, more than I could ever tell you. So, this video is going to be on microdosing mushrooms. We're going to go through protocols and how it can be effective in combating addiction. And really, honestly, any kind of mental health problems like depression and anxiety. So, let's get into it. So, there's a lot of actual misinformation online that is being perpetuated by the, online psychonaut community, okay? These are communities of people that like to take psychedelic drugs. The standard microdosing protocol is to take a mushroom is known as the golden teacher mushroom. It's a strain of psilocybin mushroom. It's the most common one. So most likely if you get mushrooms, you're going to end up getting golden teachers, okay? They're not the strongest. They're definitely not the weakest. But standard protocol to microdose these mushrooms is start with 1/10 of a gram. You take that for 3 days in a row. Then you take 2 days off. And then you continue 3 days on, 2 days off. Continue like this basically indefinitely. That's number one. Number two is to take, I believe it's 5 days on, 2 days off, and repeat while also adding niacin for whatever reason. Paul Stamets, he's a famous mushroom guy. He's the one who first kind of came up with the idea of adding niacin with microdosing. It's supposed to, potentiate the effects. When I looked into the actual science behind it, unfortunately, I used to really look up to Paul Stamets. I love the guy, so I got no problems with him. But in terms of adding niacin to a microdosing protocol, it just doesn't make sense. It's not going to do anything. It's just not. So, another thing about these on-off protocols, going 3 days on, 2 days off, 5 days on, 2 days off, whatever it may be, this doesn't make any sense. It literally doesn't make any sense, okay? So once you find out how microdosing mushrooms is actually working in the brain and what we're trying to accomplish by microdosing mushrooms, it becomes very obvious that taking any days off is counterproductive. So what's interesting about microdosing psilocybin is that it acts on similar receptors in the brain, serotonin receptors, that are affected when you take an SSRI, right? That's a like antidepressant kind of medication. Now, when you take an SSRI, it affects all of the serotonin receptors in the brain. There's quite a few, maybe 5 or more. Honestly, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. There's a bunch though. Okay, 2 of these receptors, serotonin receptors, only 2 out of the rest of them are affected when you take psilocybin. Okay, so it's almost like a more specified direct version of an SSRI, right? Instead of blocking and like interfering with all our serotonin receptors in the brain, you're only targeting 2. And now this is the absolute, I think, most fascinating part about microdosing mushrooms and why it is so beneficial. One of those serotonin receptors that is directly affected by psilocybin is the receptor that's known for creating anxiety, the feeling of discomfort and the feeling of anxiety. This is also why when you take mushrooms, even at smaller doses or definitely at larger doses, a lot of people experience crazy anxiety. It's because it's affecting that particular receptor in the brain. It makes sense, right? You're basically getting sent into a fight or flight kind of state, okay? So you're going to be feeling this anxiety. That's why. When you microdose mushrooms, especially every day, what you're doing is you're causing that serotonin receptor to downregulate. What does that mean? It means it's not going to be as active. It means you're not going to have as many of those, anxiety receptors in the brain. Basically, you're going to feel less anxiety at baseline because you're literally down regulating the receptors responsible for anxiety in the brain, right? This is similar to how SSRIs work, but like I said with mushrooms, you're only targeting 2 receptors, one of them being that anxiety receptor. So, fucking fascinating, right? And so, similar to SSRIs, the longer you're on the medication, the more effective it becomes. And this is because when you are down regulating your serotonin system in the brain, what ends up happening as a natural response is the dopamine system upregulates, right? More dopamine. We all want more dopamine. That's that feel-good drive chemical in the brain. That's, how we get rewarded, basically. It's our natural reward system is dopamine. A lot of addicts and, people with ADHD and, whatever it may be, actually suffer from low levels of dopamine at baseline. Also, same with people with anxiety disorders, etc. So really, you're doing two amazing things when you're taking mushrooms. You are down-regulating the receptors in the brain that are responsible for anxiety, while simultaneously upregulating the receptors in the brain that are responsible for feeling good, right? It almost sounds too good to be true, but listen, from personal experience, I can tell you it really does work this way. And now, definitely don't take days off. It makes no sense. The longer you're on it, the more those anxiety receptors will downregulate and the more your dopamine system will upregulate. In my personal experience, and from what I've found in my research, it's going to take about a month to 2 months, similar with an SSRI, for you to get the full effect. Okay? And you need to be taking it every single day. And now, I would also recommend slowly titrating up your dose. So start 1/10 of a gram every day. Maybe do it for, let's say, a week and a half to 2 weeks, at which point you're going to bump it up to 0.15. Okay? Again, keep at it for a week, 2 weeks. We're going to bump it up again to 0.2. Now, you don't really need to go much higher than 0.2. It's going to be case dependent. Some people might feel like they want to tolerate a little more. Some people might not. The problem is once you start getting to higher and higher dosages, you're running the risk of feeling a little shroomy, throughout your day. Now, depending on the individual, and depending on what you have to do that day, you might not want that, right? So, to be safe, stick around that 1/10 to a 1/10 and a half, no more than 2/10 of a gram per dose per day as you titrate up. I have heard some people take 3/10. Personally, I think it's too much. You just don't need that much. You really don't. So, take home from this. Microdosing mushrooms can really change your life. I mean, it changed my mindset like you wouldn't believe. It's allowed me to just feel better throughout the day. I feel the increase in dopamine. I have more motivation, more drive. My ability to stay on task has improved dramatically. Now, I've been microdosing, experimenting with mushrooms for years, but I haven't done it correctly until I'd say about the past 3 months now. I've been doing it every day the way that I described. And the benefits are unreal, guys. It really is. I really couldn't recommend it enough. Unfortunately, of course, mushrooms are illegal. So, you're going to have to figure that out for yourself. There are websites that sell kits that have spores. So the spores are totally legal. They basically come in a box. You just set it up and it grows on its own. Bam, you got your mushrooms. But if you're going to be planning on doing this long term, you're going to need a good amount of them. So, unfortunately, I can't point you in the right direction, right? That's illegal, but, we're all pretty resourceful, especially if you're on this channel. I'm sure you could figure something out, right? So, guys, take home from this. If you're going to microdose mushrooms, you got to do it every day. Taking days off makes 0 sense. Forget the niacin. Take it every day. Titrate up slowly. Not really any more than 2/10 of a gram. Like, again, I said, 3/10 I've heard. Personally, I don't need more than 2. So, and I'm a big dude, so I really can't see anyone actually needing 0.3. I think they just say that. Or maybe they have weaker mushrooms. Who knows? That's another thing. When you get your batch of mushrooms, you're going to have to experiment because every batch is different. And also, make sure you grind them up. Because misconception is that psilocybin content is equal throughout the entire body of the mushroom. It's just not true. So you could take a bite, of the top of the mushroom, and it could be way more potent than if you had taken a bite of the bottom. So what you want to do is you got to grind it up into a food processor. So basically it's just like dust. And that way, you're more likely to get, an even dose every time that you take it. So it's going to be important to make sure that you're, dosing as accurately as possible. And again, this is the argument for just using SSRIs, right? It's more straightforward. It's, you do it through a doctor and all this stuff. But listen, for me, SSRIs, they didn't sit well. I've tried them in the past. I was on Cymbalta. That's actually SSNRI. I was also on, God, it's been a while. I don't remember, but I've tried quite a few, and they really fucked me up, right? They didn't work for me at all. But mushrooms does work for me. So it might work for you too. If you're feeling depressed or you're having a hard time moving forward with tough situations in life, this could be a solution. It's definitely something to consider. Look, I'm not telling anyone to do anything illegal. I'm just telling you my own experience. Hey, if you made it this far, man, hit that subscribe button. I'll see y'all next time.